My name is Kevin Halle, 29 years old, born and raised in Portland, Oregon. If my life were a movie, no one would bother watching it. Same clothes, same coffee, same quiet apartment where the heater rattles like an old smoker. I work as a mail carrier, nothing heroic, nothing glamorous. Just walking door to door, rain or shine, delivering packages to people with lives far more exciting than mine. Every morning, before sunrise, Portland has a certain mood: cold, foggy, the kind that bites your fingertips and makes you question every life choice that led you outside this early. But weirdly, I've always liked it. The damp sidewalks, the smell of wet stone, the soft hiss of drizzle drifting from the sky. It feels like the world is whispering. Instead of shouting. My walk to the postal van takes exactly 12 minutes. 10 if I'm late, 15 if I'm trying to. Delay facing another day delivering bills, subscriptions people forgot to cancel, and Amazon boxes they don't even remember ordering. But every day for the past 3 months, there's been one reason I walk slower: the boy on the bench. Selwood Park is old, quiet, and almost always empty at dawn. Moss crawls along the stone paths. A pond sits still like a sheet of glass. The giant oak tree in the center looks older than the city itself, and under that oak on the same cold, weather-worn bench sits him, a kid. 12, maybe 13. Thin as winter branches, brown hair messy like he cut it himself with a pocket knife. A hoodie that used to be red but faded into some color between rust and dirt. Sneakers whose soles are so worn down, they look like cardboard. Taped to his feet, his name is Milo. I still remember the first morning I ever saw him shivering, arms wrapped around himself, pretending to be asleep though his eyes kept flicking open at footsteps. Most homeless people look tired or angry or completely numb. But Milo, he looked lost. And every morning since, he's been there. I don't know why I started giving him $1. Maybe because nobody ever looked out for me when I was his age. My dad made sure of that, cold, loud, always reminding me that I was dead weight. I used to think those words didn't stick. Turns out they did. Sometimes they still echo when I'm too tired to drown them. So giving Milo a buck each morning felt like the smallest act of defiance. Against my own past, today was no different. I spotted him from across the park, curled over his knees, fog swirling around him like a ghostly blanket. He didn't notice me at first. I always walk quietly. Habit from growing up in a house where making noise meant getting yelled at. Mornin', Milo, I said softly. His head shot up, bright eyes that still had hope in them somehow. Hey, Mr. Kevin, he replied, voice polite but thin. He never asked for money. He never begged. He just sat there like he didn't want to bother the world. I pulled a crumpled $1 from my pocket. Here for breakfast. His small hand reached out, shaking slightly, but he smiled like I'd given him gold. Thank you, sir. Every time he said that sir, it tightened something in my chest. Like he admired me. Like I was someone worth looking up to. I was about to leave when I noticed something different. His hoodie sleeve ripped deeper. His cheek bruised faintly purple. His eyes darting around like he was afraid someone else might appear. Milo. I crouched down. Did something happen last night? He flinched at my closeness, a tiny, reflexive movement, but noticeable. No, sir. I'm okay, really. He wasn't, not even close, and for the first time, I felt something stir inside me, protective, uneasy, almost paternal. I didn't know then that this morning was the last ordinary one I'd ever have, because just 2 days later, that same polite boy would text me 5 words that froze my blood. Kevin, don't go home tonight. And when I didn't listen fast enough, my entire world turned upside down. Before I continue, tell, from which place are you watching this story right now? Please subscribe and like the video for motivation. The next morning, something felt wrong. The second I stepped outside, Portland was heavier than usual fog, thick enough to taste, sky a dull gray that looked bruised. Even the streetlights seemed tired. I stuffed my hands deeper into my jacket pockets and headed towards Selwood Park, boots splashing through shallow puddles. Normally, I look forward to seeing Milo, not because it's some feel-good charity moment, but because he's the only person in my daily routine who actually looks happy to see me. But today, as I entered the park, that familiar warmth twisted into a knot in my stomach. The bench under the ancient oak was empty. No hoo. No sneakers. No small figure waiting quietly with hopeful eyes. Just damp wood and fallen leaves. I stopped walking. It was like someone had punched air out of my lungs. Milo had never missed a morning. Not once. Not even on days when the rain came down hard enough to flood gutters. Milo? I called out quietly. Nothing. Just the echo of my own voice. Swallowed by fog. I checked the bush, the edge of the pond, the nearby playground. No sign of him. My steps quickened into a mild panic. I didn't know why he wasn't technically my responsibility. But after months of seeing that kid every day, part of me had unknowingly grown attached. Something was wrong. I felt it in my chest. I pulled out my phone. He didn't have a number. At least not one he ever shared. So I just stood there in the fog, staring at the empty bench like it might give me answers, but the world didn't stop for my worry. My supervisor definitely wouldn't. By the time I reached the postal van, I was late and soaked from the mist. My boss, Mr. Cooper, a man whose personality could best be described as a perpetually angry potato, glared at me from behind the chain-link fence. "Hello! You're late again," he barked. "Sorry, I lost track of time." "Yeah, well, if you lose track of time again this week, you can lose your job too. Same speech every other week." I tuned him out. My mind wasn't here. It was still back in the park. Where was Milo? The workday dragged like a sentence in a bad novel. Door after door, mailbox after mailbox. Dogs barking, people complaining, rain soaking through my jacket. Usually I power through it, but today I kept checking my phone even though no message was coming. By noon, the drizzle turned into a steady rain. Portland at its finest. I was about halfway through my route when my phone buzzed. The vibration was sharp, urgent, like it stabbed right through my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting a reminder from my boss, but the screen showed a number I didn't recognize, just 10 digits with no name attached. My stomach dropped when I read the message. "Mr. Kevin?" "It's me, Milo." My fingers froze mid-air. He had a phone. "Since when?" "Where did he get before I could think further?" Another message flashed in. "Something bad happened last night." My pulse picked up. I stepped under the awning of a closed bakery, shielding my screen from the rain. "Milo? What happened? Where are you?" The typing dots appeared. Disappeared? Came back? Vanished again. Whatever he wanted to say, he was scared to say it. Finally, the message arrived. "I'm fine now. But please, don't go home tonight." Hey. Chill ran up my spine, not metaphorically. Literally. The words felt wrong. Too mature for a kid his age. Too serious for someone who always tried to be polite and calm. "Milo. Why not? What's going on?" His reply came in instantly, like he'd been waiting for me to ask. "They were looking for you." My throat went dry. Before I could get clarification, before I could even take another breath, my phone died. Battery 0%. Just like that. Rain poured harder, almost sideways, drowning the world in noise. I stood there, heart pounding, staring at a lifeless screen, knowing two things. Hey, homeless kids should not be texting warnings like that. Some group had been looking for me, and I had absolutely no idea why. What I also didn't know was that this was the last moment of normalcy I would ever experience. Because by the time night fell, the warning Milo sent would become terrifyingly real. When my phone died, it felt like the world cut its only lifeline. Milo's last message. "They were looking for you," played in my mind, like a broken record as I finished my route with numb hands and a stomach twisted in knots. By the time I clocked out, the rain had eased, but the sky looked bruised purple, heavy with more coming. I sat in the postal van for a long moment, staring at the faint reflection of my own worried face in the windshield. Who the hell was they? And why would they want me? I wasn't special, I wasn't rich, I wasn't involved in anything illegal. My life was so ordinary it bordered on depressing, unless this wasn't about me, unless this was about Milo. But what could a 12-year-old homeless boy possibly be mixed up in? With no way to message him back, I did the one thing I shouldn't have. I drove home. I live in a quiet neighborhood on the east side. Old houses, overgrown yards, the kind of place where neighbors wave but don't know each other's names. When I turned onto my street, something felt different instantly. Not the kind of different you see. The kind you feel. A car I didn't recognize was parked 2 houses down from mine. Gray sedan, windows tinted way too dark for Oregon standards. At first, I thought nothing of it. Plenty of people visit friends or relatives, but as I slowed to pull into my driveway, I noticed something that snapped every nerve awake. There was someone sitting inside. Not moving, not scrolling on a phone. Just staring forward, perfectly still like a statue. I swallowed. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe Milo's message had gotten under my skin. But then they turned their head, just slightly. Just enough to let me know they saw me. The hairs on my arms rose. I parked and sat frozen for a few seconds. Rain tapped lightly across the roof of the van, slowing to a gentle drizzle. I forced myself to breathe. Get a grip, Kevin, I muttered. But deep down, I knew something wasn't normal. I got out, locked the van, and walked toward my front door. The sedan didn't move, but I could feel eyes burning into my back. Every instinct in me screamed, "Don't go inside." Don't, but I ignored it stupidly. The moment I stepped inside, I knew the house wasn't right. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but I'm the kind of person who lives alone and keeps things exactly where they belong. A chair slightly pulled out, a coat laying on a different hook, a sock that should be in the bedroom sitting in the hallway. But today, my living room smelled faintly of cigarette smoke. I don't smoke. No one has smoked in my house ever. The floor by the kitchen door had wet footprints too, of them too large to be mine, facing inward as if someone had come in from the back door. Window latch near the dining room was unlocked. I always lock that window. My heart thudded once hard. Someone had been inside. Recently. My first instinct was to grab the baseball bat I kept in the coat closet, the one I bought thinking it would make me feel safer. It never had. Until now, I gripped it tight and moved through the house room by room. Kitchen, empty. Hallway, silent. Bathroom, nothing. Bedroom, I pushed the door open slowly. Empty. But the closet door was open, wide open. I always close that damn thing. My throat tightened. I walked over and looked. Inside. Nothing. No intruder. No monster hiding in the shadows, but on the floor, near my shoes, there was something that made my blood run cold. A single, muddy bootprint. Not mine. Not from any delivery guy, not from a friend, because I didn't have any who visited. A stranger had stood inside my closet, watching, searching, waiting. I stepped back, trembling. Milo was right. Someone had been looking for me. Just then a soft thud came from outside the bedroom window. Right on the other side of the glass. I spun around so fast, the bat almost slipped from my hands. Another thud. Like a footstep on wet soil. Slow. Deliberate. Edged toward the window, gripping the curtain. My heart hammered so violently it drowned out every rational thought. With one swift motion, I pulled the curtain aside and saw a shadow. Tall. Broad. Standing near the fence, half hidden by the dark. Not moving, just watching my house, watching me. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and a faint flicker of lightning lit the sky. But by the time the flash faded, the figure was gone, just vanished like they'd melted into the night. I didn't breathe for a full 10 seconds. Then dashed with my hands shaking. I grabbed my phone, plugged it in, and waited desperately for it to power on. I needed to see if Milo had sent anything else. I needed to ask him what the hell was going on. I needed answers because right now, I was scared, actually scared, and I hadn't felt that since I was a kid. By the time my phone finally came back to life, The house had grown colder, almost unnaturally so, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. The screen lit up weakly, notifications flooding in one after another, missed texts, low battery warnings, weather alerts, but none from Milo. I stared at the screen, willing another message to appear, but nothing did. The silence buzzing in my living room felt heavier than noise. My heart hadn't slowed down since I saw that shadow outside my window. Every movement in the house, every creak, every shifting board, every distant rumble of thunder made my muscles tighten. I wasn't paranoid. Not anymore. Someone had been inside my house. Someone had gone through my things. Someone had stood in my closet, leaving behind muddy boot prints like a calling card. I checked every locked twice front door, back door, windows, even the old attic hatch I never used. Everything secured. Everything supposed to keep me safe. Yet none of it made me feel safer. It felt like putting a bandage over a stab wound. The house was quiet, but not peacefully quiet. More like the quiet before something breaks. Even the hum of the refrigerator sounded sharper. The ticking of the kitchen clock suddenly felt too loud, echoing through the hallway like a countdown. I sat on the edge of my couch with the baseball bat across my lap and my back against the wall, so no one could stand behind me. My eyes stayed on the windows, watching the darkness outside swallow my yard. I kept thinking about that gray sedan parked down the street. The still figure inside. The way their head turned just slightly when I walked by. Did they follow me? Did they come inside while I was at work? Were they still there now, watching from behind some tree or fence? A drop of rain hit the window, then another, then dozens more. Soon the rain came down in sheets, slapping hard against the glass, turning everything outside into a blurry mess of shadows and moving shapes. My phone buzzed suddenly, so loud in the silent house that I nearly dropped the bat. It wasn't a text. It wasn't a call. It was an unknown number. Trying to FaceTime me. My blood froze. The name displayed read only, no caller. ID. It kept ringing, the vibration rattling the phone against the wooden coffee table. No one FaceTimes randomly, especially not people who hide their number. I didn't answer. I just stared as the call kept going, stopped, then started again. 3 times. 4 times. Each ring felt like a hand tapping against my front door. On the 5th call, I snapped. I hit decline with shaking fingers and turned the phone face down. My breath came out uneven and I realized my hands were ice cold. I stood up, the bat still clutched tight, and walked to the front window. Rain streaked down the glass, distorting the streetlights into smears of orange. The gray sedan was still there, engine running now, headlights off. A faint glow inside suggested someone was using a phone or screen. I felt my pulse jump painfully as something flickered in my peripheral vision, a fast movement near the side of my house. I whipped my head toward the kitchen window. For a split second, illuminated by a flash of lightning, I saw the shape of a man standing inches from the glass. Broad shoulders, hood up, face hidden. His posture wasn't casual. He wasn't passing by. He was standing still, body angled as if listening. The lightning faded, and he vanished into the dark again. My breath hitched. I stepped backward, my fingers tightening on the bat so hard my knuckles burned. I needed help. I needed to call someone, police, a neighbor, anyone, but before I could grab my phone again, it buzzed softly on its own. A text, one single notification. My heart hammered against my ribs as I flipped the phone over. It was from Milo, a short message. One I read twice, because I wasn't sure if I was imagining it. Mr. Kevin. They're close. My throat closed. I typed back instantly, fingers fumbling over the screen. Milo, what's going on? Who is they? Where are you? Please answer me. The typing dots didn't appear. No reply came. The rain hammered harder, drowning out every sound except my own heartbeat. I didn't know what they meant. I didn't know how a 12-year-old kid ended up warning me about danger. I didn't understand. But one thing I knew with absolute clarity. I was no longer safe in my own home, and whatever was coming for me was already just outside the walls, The moment I realized I wasn't safe, truly not safe, something inside me shifted. Fear wasn't just a spike in my chest anymore. It settled deep, cold and heavy, crawling up my spine. I sat perfectly still on the couch, gripping the baseball bat so tightly my palm began to ache. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe normally. I was trying to listen for footsteps, whispers, anything that confirmed what every instinct in my body already screamed. Someone was outside. Someone who had already been inside. My home once tonight. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, painfully loud, each second echoing in the house like a drip of water in an empty cave. I kept replaying the image of the man at the window, the hooded figure standing too still, too quiet, as if he was waiting for a signal. My mind tried to make sense of it, to cling to something rational. But there was no explanation that fit. None that didn't make me feel like prey. The rain finally began to lighten, turning from a furious downpour into a soft tapping. The sudden quiet made the world feel even more exposed. My breathing sounded too loud, my heartbeat too obvious. And then, right when the rain eased and the air settled, a sound shattered the fragile stillness. Knock. One single knock. Slow, deliberate and heavy. It came from my front door, not a random branch. Hitting it. Not a package drop. Not a neighbor. A knock meant for. I froze, like an animal caught in the spotlight. My fingers tightened around the bat. I didn't move, not even an inch. The knock came again, this time slightly firmer, but still slow. Whoever it was knew I was inside. They weren't calling my name or pretending to be delivery. They were patient. They were calm. And they were right. On the other side of the thin wood, separating me from a nightmare. My throat dried painfully. I leaned forward just a little, listening as carefully as I could. There were no voices, no footsteps, no second person, just one persistent presence behind that knock. My phone buzzed in my lap. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I grabbed it quickly and saw a new text from Milo, no punctuation. No greeting, nothing extra. Don't answer it. My pulse thudded so hard. I felt it in my fingertips. Another knock followed the message. This one quicker, with a faint scrape, like whoever stood there had dragged their knuckles along the wood. Kevin, a voice finally called from outside. My stomach dropped. Straight through me. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It wasn't even threatening. It was calm. Measured. Almost polite. Kevin opened the door. We need to talk. The way he said my name didn't feel right. There was no confusion, no questioning tone, just certainty. Like someone reading a name off a list. I stood completely still, my heart hammering, my mind racing through everything that could explain this. Nobody should have known I lived alone. Nobody visited me, not even friends. My mom didn't drop by without calling. And my dad, well, he wouldn't be here. He hadn't looked at me like a human being in years. The man knocked again, but softer now, almost coaxing. Come on now. You're awake. We saw your light turn on. Double quotes. There was more than one. My skin prickled cold. I swallowed the panic rising in my throat and stepped backward, away from the door, keeping the bat raised. I listened with everything in me, and that's when I heard it, very faint, just to the right of the house. Footsteps, slow, deliberate crunches on wet gravel. They were surrounding the house. Third text buzzed in from Milo. Back door too. Don't move. I stared at the words, absorbing each one like a blade pressed against my skin. Milo knew. He somehow knew where they were, how many there were, and what they were doing. I wanted to text back 100 questions, but my hands shook too much to type. Then came the sound that ripped straight through my chest. The back doorknob began to turn. Slowly. Quietly. Trying not to make noise. Cold rush of adrenaline hit me so fast my vision blurred. I crouched behind the couch, bat gripped so hard it hurt. The house felt too small now, too many entry points, too many shadows. I could hear faint breaths outside, the shuffle of feet, whispers being exchanged in hushed tones. They thought I was cornered. And they were right. My phone buzzed once more, and even though my hands trembled violently, I raised it to look. Another message from Milo, this one only 3 words. Don't stay there. As soon as I read it, a loud crash came from the back of the house wood splintering. Something being forced, blown open, or kicked in. They weren't knocking anymore. They were coming in. There was no time to think. No time to plan. Only time to run. The moment. The back door crashed open. The sound tore through the house like a violent crack of thunder. My whole body jolted, and instinct took over before logic could even catch up. I ducked lower behind the couch, heart pounding so hard it echoed in my head, swallowing every other sound. Heavy footsteps entered my kitchen, slow but confident, the kind of steps made by someone who knew exactly what they were doing and wasn't afraid of being caught. The intruders didn't speak now. They didn't have to. Their silence was louder than voices. My breath came in shaky bursts. Every muscle in my body felt like a stretched wire, ready to snap. I pressed myself against the side of the couch, listening hard. Someone walked across the tile floor, their shoes squeaking slightly from the rain-soaked sawdust. Another person's weight shifted near the back hallway. They were spreading out, one moving left, one moving right. They were sweeping the house like professionals, like they'd done this before. My phone buzzed softly in my pocket and I froze. Even that tiny vibration seemed deafening in the suffocating quiet. I pressed my hand over it to muffle the sound and slid the screen up just enough to see the message window. Now, Milo. I didn't understand how he knew. I didn't have time to. I just knew that staying a second longer meant letting these men find me. I peeked around the couch. Through the dim light, I could see the hallway leading toward my bedroom, toward the window Milo meant. It wasn't far, but the intruders were already inside. One wrong move, one creak of the floor, one shaky breath, and they'd hear me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my trembling legs. The footsteps in the kitchen paused. I heard one of them breathe out, calm and steady, like he was in no rush. They had time. They thought I was trapped. And in any normal situation, I would have been. But I had one advantage they didn't know about. Milo moved, slow, controlled steps across the carpet, staying close to the wall, avoiding every spot I knew creaked under pressure. Years living alone had taught me exactly where to walk when I didn't want to wake myself up in the middle of the night, grabbing a snack. I slid across the room, the baseball bat still in hand, though I wasn't sure what good it would do against men who sounded like they could break a door with their shoulders. As I reached the bedroom doorway, I heard one of them speak for the first time since breaking. And he's here. The voice was deep, low, certain. My heart dropped. They didn't guess. They knew. I slipped into the bedroom and shut the door behind me without a sound. Rain tapped lightly against the window, the only thing masking the faint rustle of movement from the hallway outside. The lamp in my room cast a soft glow, but I turned it off instantly. Darkness swallowed the room. My eyes adjusted fast. The window was only a few feet away. I moved toward it and unlatched the lock with shaking fingers. Footsteps approached the bedroom, too. Sets, slow, deliberate. They knew exactly where I was. The window screeched faintly as I pushed it open, and a bolt of panic shot through me. The men stopped in the hallway. Silence stretched, painfully thick. Then the doorknob turned, not fast, not aggressive, just a slow, confident twist, as if they already knew what they'd find on the other side. I didn't think anymore. Thought would have killed me. I pushed the window up the rest of the way, swung my leg through, and dropped into the rain-soaked yard below. The earth hit my knees hard, sending a sharp pain up my legs, but adrenaline drowned it immediately. I scrambled upright just as the door behind me burst open, slamming into the wall. A flashlight beam shot through the bedroom and straight out the window, slicing through the darkness. There! Someone shouted. Their voices weren't calm anymore. I bolted across the yard, slipping in the mud, grabbing onto the fence for balance. The cold rain plastered my clothes to my body as I climbed over, dropping into the neighbor's backyard. A dog barked somewhere nearby, loud and startled, but I didn't stop. I ran behind the shed, lungs burning, legs shaking, trying to keep my movements quiet and fast at the same time. Behind me, I heard the sound that chilled me to the bone. The men were climbing out the window after me. They weren't giving up. They weren't slow. They weren't confused. They were chasing me. I cut across the next yard, ducked under a half-broken clothesline, and pushed through a patch of blackberry bush that tore at my arms. Every breath felt like it was being dragged through needles. The world was a blur of shadows and wet. My phone buzzed. Again, I didn't want to stop, but I forced myself into a crouch behind a recycling bin and checked the message with shaking hands. Come to the park, hurry, Selwood. Park. Of course, I looked behind me. Flashlight beams cut across the yards 2 houses back. They were fast. Too fast. They weren't amateurs. I didn't know who they were, but they moved with purpose, precision, unity, and they were hunting me like they'd prepared for it. I took off again, slipping through the final yard, hopping another fence, and bursting out onto a quiet street. My feet splashed through a puddle so hard water sprayed up past my shins. I didn't care. I didn't think. I just ran toward the only person who seemed to know what was happening, ran toward the only person who warned me in time, ran toward the one place I might still have a chance. I ran toward Milo, and somewhere behind me, in the rain-soaked darkness, I could hear voices closing in. The night after the raid, after the police arrested Raymond, after the detectives collected evidence from the basement, the locks, the rope, the camera tripod, the stained mattress, I sat in my silent, half-destroyed living room with Milo asleep on my couch. The kid looked smaller than ever, curled into the blanket I gave him, breathing softly, finally safe for the first time in years. My entire house still smelled like dust and broken drywall, but the thing that hit me the hardest was how light the air felt. For the first time since moving in, the house wasn't watching me. The walls weren't listening. The shadows weren't pretending to be ordinary. And I wasn't alone in that storm of dread I'd been carrying for weeks. But as I stood there looking at Milo, I realized something. Saving him didn't just rescue him from a monster. It rescued me from my own loneliness. The officers told me the next morning that they got him. Raymond had been stalking multiple young boys around the city, following them, photographing them, trying to lure them. They said Milo wasn't his first target, but he was the first who escaped. The basement inside my own house, my house, had been his hideout, the place he'd been watching me from, the place he was planning to drag both of us into sooner or later. Hearing that made me physically sick. I walked out of the police station, gripping the report in shaking hands. But the second I stepped outside, I saw Milo sitting on the curb, swinging his legs, waiting for me. He smiled when he saw me, an honest, wide, relieved smile, and something in me softened in a way I didn't know was possible. Social services tried to speak with him again, tried to get him into the system, but he clung to the sleeve of my jacket and whispered in a tiny broken voice, "Don't leave me. Kevin, please, I don't want to go with strangers." I felt something crack inside my chest. Maybe because I knew exactly what it felt like to have no one, to grow up unwanted, to be treated like a responsibility instead of a human being. I knelt down in front of him and held his shoulders. "You're not going anywhere alone again," I said. "Not ever." His eyes filled instantly, and he hugged me so tight I had to squeeze my teeth together to keep from crying. The following weeks were a storm of paperwork, interviews, home inspections, lawyers, meetings with caseworkers. I'd never filled out so many forms in my entire life. But every night, Milo sat at my dining table doing homework, or drawing comics, or telling me about birds he liked, or helping me cook spaghetti in a way that always ended with sauce splattered across the stove. My house, once silent and cold, now sounded like laughter and mismatched socks sliding on hardwood floors. The empty darkness that used to press against the windows now felt warm, alive, human. One morning, almost 3 months later, I got a letter. White envelope. Government seal. My hands shook as I opened it. Milo stood beside me, chewing his thumbnail nervously. The moment my eyes hit the page, my throat tightened. I read the words out loud with a trembling voice. Approval granted. Emergency foster placement transition to permanent guardianship. Milo froze. Then he looked up at me with those big, round eyes that once begged, silently for someone to notice him. Does that mean I can stay? His voice cracked on the last word. I pulled him into my chest. It means you're home, he cried. I cried. It was messy, loud, real. And now, every morning, instead of giving a homeless boy $1, I make breakfast for my son. He sits at the kitchen counter swinging his feet, waiting for his eggs, telling me about his dreams, asking if we can visit the park after school. We still walk through Selwood Park every morning just like we used to. The difference is, I'm not alone. He walks beside me, not shivering on a bench, not invisible to the world, but holding a warm cup of cocoa, wearing a jacket we picked out together, and smiling at every bird that hops by. Sometimes he still slips his small hand into mine, and every time he does, I realize something I never understood before. Thought I was rescuing a kid who had no one, but he was rescuing a man who felt like no one. And together we finally found home.